Ever feel, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like I'm playing crypto roulette,
Roulette, how so?
Well, you think you're about to make a killer move, buy, sell, whatever, and then bam, transaction fees get you, spins the wheel, and you end up losing way more than you expected.
It's like finding a hidden cost, right? Buried in the fine print.
Exactly. Like, get this, last year, Bitcoin fees, they jumped over 200%.
Ouch.
Yeah, according to this article, we're looking at crypto transaction fees, a beginner's guide from June. Wild, right?
Yeah, fees are definitely something you want to stay on top of, for sure.
For sure. So for this deep dive, let's decode these crypto transaction fees, figure out why they exist, and how to avoid getting slammed by them. What do you think?
Sounds like a plan.
Hmm.
Knowledge is power, right? Especially with crypto. Understanding these fees, it can really make a difference to your bottom line.
Okay, so let's unpack the basics then. What exactly are crypto transaction fees? What are we even talking about here?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, think of them like tolls. You're familiar with tolls,
So
right?
on the highway, sure.
Exactly. But instead of roads, it's the blockchain. Each transaction, sending crypto using a dApp, whatever it is, requires a small fee to be processed and added to the chain.
Okay, and why? We pay these tolls. Why? Is it just the cost of doing digital business? What's the reason?
It's really about keeping the whole system running smoothly and securely. This is crypto, remember? There are no central banks here.
Right, right.
Instead, we have miners or validators. They're the ones using their computing power to verify all those transactions, secure the network, the whole thing. So these fees reward them for their efforts. Keeps them going.
So it's like we're collectively tipping the digital bouncers who keep the blockchain party going.
Huh. Yeah, something like that. And a side benefit is that it helps to prevent, spam transactions from clogging up the network.
Right, right. That makes sense.
Imagine if it was free to send crypto. People would be spamming the system left and right.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. But how does this fee thing, like, how does it actually work? I send some Bitcoin, it magically arrives, but at what cost? How is that
No
determined?
magic involved, just, clever cryptography.
Of course, of course.
When you send a transaction, it joins a pool of other transactions, all waiting to be added to the blockchain.
Okay.
Miners pick transactions from this pool and bundle them into blocks. You've heard of blocks, right?
Yeah.
So they're like these digital miners sorting through a mountain of transactions.
Mum-
And here's where fees come in. Miners prioritize transactions with higher attached fees. It's a way to incentivize them to process those transactions first.
So it's like a fast track lane for your crypto, but you gotta pay.
You got it. So this creates a kind of dynamic fee market where prices fluctuate based on network demand. High traffic, higher fees. During quieter periods, they decrease.
So timing is key then. But what else impacts these costs? Because it can't just be about when you transact, right?
Every blockchain has its own, you could say, quirks. Let's take Bitcoin, for example.
Okay.
Fees are often based on transaction size, the amount of data it takes up. Larger transactions, higher fees.
So sending a little Bitcoin is like sending a postcard. Cheap and cheerful,
Right.
but a big transfer, that's like shipping a whole furniture set.
Exactly. And then you have platforms like Ethereum where complexity matters.
Okay. How so?
Think about using a dApp, one of those decentralized applications we hear so much about. Requires more computational power, so naturally higher fees.
Oh, I see.
A simple transfer is like sending a text, right?
Hmm.
While using a dApp is like playing a complex video game on the blockchain. More power, higher cost.
Interesting. So with Bitcoin, it's about size. With Ethereum, it's about like the computing muscle needed. Are there any other big factors we should know about?
Definitely. Remember Alice from the article? Who paid an outrageous fee to send Bitcoin during peak hours?
Yeah, that was rough. Definitely learned that lesson the hard way, I'd say.
Right. And that brings us to network congestion. When the blockchain is jammed, those fees, they skyrocket. Like trying to get a ride share during rush hour. Surge pricing, anyone.
Oof, makes sense. Avoid peak times. Got it. Any other insider tips for dodging these high fees?
We'll get to those. But first, let's shift gears a little bit and explore the different types of crypto transaction fees you might come across.
Okay, yeah, let's map out this fee landscape. I'm ready to learn about all the different species of fees lurking out there. Okay, so we've covered what crypto transaction fees are, why they exist. Seems like we can't escape them, right?
They're part of the ecosystem.
For better or worse. But you know what I find interesting? All the different kinds of fees out there. It's like a whole, a crypto safari.
And we're here to make sure you don't get eaten alive.
Right. We got you covered.
So the most common type you're going to encounter, these are network fees. sometimes called minor fees, validator fees. Kind of depends on the specific blockchain.
Okay. And those are the ones that go directly to the folks who actually keep the system up and running, right?
Exactly. They're essential for processing transactions and making sure the network stays secure the whole 9 yards. Like we were saying before, that amount can really fluctuate depending on how busy the network is, the size of your transaction, all that.
Got it. Got to keep those validators happy. But the article did mention some other types of fees. We saw flat fees, dynamic fees, even percentage fees, things like that. Not all blockchains are created equal, right? I'm
Yes,
guessing.
you got it. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Some blockchains, oftentimes the newer, smaller ones, they'll use a flat fee model.
Okay.
That means it costs the same to make a transaction,
Right.
regardless of, how much crypto you're actually sending or how much activity there is on the network.
Interesting. Simple enough, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like that could be a good deal for larger transactions then.
Yeah, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But like with anything else, there's always a trade-off.
Right.
Flat fees, they can make microtransactions kind of impractical. So if you're sending a tiny amount of crypto, that flat fee might wipe out, a huge chunk of the value.
Ah, so it's about using the right tool for the job, I guess.
Exactly.
Okay. What about those dynamic fees? Because those sound a little bit more, well, dynamic, I guess.
Exactly. Dynamic fees, as the name suggests, they constantly fluctuate. It's all based on supply and demand. Bitcoin, Ethereum, those both use this model.
So when things get hectic, those fees can really shoot up.
That's right. And it encourages people who really need their transaction processed quickly to offer a higher fee, which then incentivizes the miners to prioritize it.
Mm.
It's kind of an elegant system when you think about it, self-regulating.
Yeah, like a constant dance between urgency and frugality, I guess.
That's a good way to put it.
And lastly, we have the percentage fees. Those are different, right, from the others?
Yeah, percentage fees you'll mainly see on centralized crypto exchanges. When you're buying, selling, maybe converting to your local currency.
Okay.
They charge a small percentage of the total transaction rather than a fixed fee or a dynamically adjusted one.
So if you're a frequent trader, those fees could really start to add up then.
Exactly. So it's really crucial to kind of factor them into your trading strategy from the get-go. Otherwise, those small percentages can make pretty big difference over time, eat into your profits.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Something to keep in mind. Now, the article also mentioned maker and taker fees, which I got to be honest, I'm not too familiar with. Are those related to exchanges as well?
They are. Think of makers as the people who add liquidity to an exchange, right? They place orders that aren't immediately filled. They're basically waiting for someone to take them up on their offer.
Okay, so they're making the market, so to speak.
Exactly. And they get rewarded for that with lower fees.
Okay.
Takers, on the other hand, they remove liquidity. They take existing orders. And for that convenience of, immediate execution, they're charged a slightly higher fee.
So it's all about incentivizing people to, add to that pool, make it easier for others to make those quick trades.
Exactly. It keeps things moving.
Right, right. Wow. It's a lot to keep track of. With all these different types of fees, how can we make this more concrete for people? Any examples come to mind?
Sure. Let's go back to Alice. Remember her situation. She got slammed with that massive fee because she tried to send Bitcoin during peak hours.
Yeah, poor Alice.
Right. Now, let's imagine David. He wants to move his Ethereum from an exchange to his own private wallet for safekeeping. Smart move.
Absolutely. Can't be too careful these days.
Exactly. But he's actually getting hit with two fees here. First, there's the exchange. They're going to charge him a withdrawal fee. Then there's the Ethereum gas fee to actually process that transaction on the blockchain itself.
A double whammy.
And if the network is congested, those fees could be, well, significant. Let's put it that way. So the takeaway here is timing is everything. David's better off just being patient, waiting for a quieter moment when the network fees are lower.
Right. So being patient can really pay off, literally. The article also mentioned microtransactions. I was curious about those. How do fees work with those? Because those are tiny amounts, right?
Yeah. Microtransactions, those are tricky. Let's say Emily, for example, wants to use Bitcoin to pay for, I don't know, a few online articles, something like that, on a platform that accepts micropayments. Even though the amount she's sending is small, that network fee for Bitcoin might actually be higher than the cost of the articles themselves.
Wow, yeah.
That's where alternative cryptocurrencies come in, ones that are specifically designed for microtransactions. So something like Nano or Stellar, those have super low fees.
Right, right. Much more cost effective for those types of situations, it sounds like.
Exactly. It all comes back to picking the right blockchain for the task at hand.
Picking the right tool for the job. Okay, so we've got Alice battling congestion, We've got David timing his transfers. We've got Emily finding crypto that actually fits her needs. What other real-world, like, fee traps should people be aware of? What else comes to mind?
Well, the article mentions Phil and his experience using a DApp, a decentralized application, for insurance on the Ethereum blockchain.
Right.
His transaction involved interacting with a smart contract, which is just a fancy way of saying it required more computing power to process, and more power means higher fees,
So more complex actions equal higher fees?
pretty much.
Okay, makes sense.
It's like choosing express shipping over standard delivery.
Right, exactly. You get what you pay for.
Exactly. And speaking of comparisons, the article had this really helpful table, actually, that breaks down typical transaction costs for some common crypto activities. And you can really see how much these fees can vary. Depends on the blockchain you're using, what you're trying to do, all of that.
Yeah, that table was super eye-opening. Really highlights like why it's so important to just be informed, right, about these cost differences because they can be huge.
Knowledge is power,
Yeah,
especially in the world of crypto.
for sure. Okay, so now that we've explored the fee landscape, we've seen how these costs can really add up. Let's talk strategy. What can our listeners do to kind of minimize these fees, keep more of their hard-earned crypto?
Okay, so let's flip the script now and talk strategy. We've talked about what crypto transaction fees are, why they're there, all the different forms they take. How can our listeners actually avoid those high fees and keep more of their crypto?
Well, the good news is you don't have to be like a crypto whiz to save on fees. A lot of times it's just simple strategic moves. Remember David's situation where he was trying to move his Ethereum off the exchange?
Yeah, the double fee situation?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why strategic timing is so crucial.
Okay.
Think of it like avoiding rush hour traffic, but for your crypto. You don't want to be sending transactions when the blockchain is totally slammed. So how do we avoid those digital traffic jams? Anything we can, any tools?
Lots of crypto wallets have built-in fee estimators these days.
Oh?
So they give you a real-time look at what the network congestion is like. They even suggest fees based on how fast you want the transaction to go through.
So like a GPS for your crypto, kind of.
Exactly. Steering you clear of those high fee zones.
I like that. That's a good one. Okay, so besides just being patient and waiting for things to quiet down a little bit, what else can we do?
It might seem kind of obvious, but a lot of people don't realize you can adjust your transaction fees manually.
Oh, okay.
Most wallets will give you that level of control.
So if I'm not in a hurry, I can just set a lower fee and let it go through when it goes through.
Exactly.
Mm.
It might take a bit longer, but you can save quite a bit, especially for smaller transactions. You're basically choosing the scenic route, enjoying the view, and saving some crypto along the way.
Love that analogy. Now, what about those more, I guess, advanced tech-savvy ways to dodge fees? I'm thinking of layer 2 solutions, things like that. They were mentioned in the article. I know it's a hot topic.
Yeah, layer 2 solutions are huge. It's like building these express lanes on top of the main blockchain. So transactions are handled off-chain, much faster processing, drastically lower fees.
Like a high-speed rail for your crypto, just bypasses all the traffic.
Exactly.
So are there layer 2 solutions for everything?
They're getting there. The Lightning Network, for example, is a really popular one for Bitcoin. Basically, a whole network of payment channels that let you do near-instant, practically feeless transactions.
Wow, that's incredible. What about for other blockchains, Ethereum, for instance?
Yeah, Ethereum has actually seen a ton of layer 2 platforms popping up. Polygon, Arbitrum, Optimism, just to name a few.
Right.
They all have their own strengths.
Right.
But the goal is the same. Improve that scalability, make it faster, and minimize those gas fees.
It's the future, cheaper, faster, all of that. But we got to acknowledge, I mean, this is a landscape that is constantly evolving, right?
Always changing.
Any thoughts on what the future holds for crypto transaction fees in general?
Well, the article touched on a few things. On the one hand, you've got all this incredible technology coming out, like we were just talking about, these layer 2 solutions that could really drive down fees in the long run.
Right. That's the optimistic outlook. What about the other side of the coin?
The flip side is that crypto is becoming more and more mainstream, right? More users, which is great, but that could lead to more network congestion, potentially push those fees back up.
Right. So it's a real tug of war between like innovation and then that adoption. Any other wild cards out there that could shake things up?
Regulation is the big one, right? How governments decide to regulate cryptocurrencies, that could have a huge impact on the whole fee landscape.
Mm.
We might see standardized fee structures, caps on what they can charge, maybe even new tax implications, who knows?
Right. A lot to think about. So it sounds like staying informed is absolutely key here, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. This world never stands still, you know.
Yeah.
Keep your ear to the ground, keep learning about new technologies, what's happening with regulations, all the trends in the industry, and you'll be in a much better position to, navigate those fees, whatever they throw at you.
Great advice to end on. As we wrap up our little deep dive here, what's the one key takeaway you really want to leave our listeners with?
Honestly, it all comes back to knowledge is power. It sounds so cliche, but it's true. Just by understanding how crypto transaction fees work, why they're necessary, what impacts their cost, all of that, you're already ahead of the curve. And don't be afraid to explore those different options we talked about, and just stay curious.
I love it. Well said. And remember, everyone, this is just a starting point. The world of crypto is huge, it's always changing. So keep learning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep those transaction fees low.